Welcome to the deep dive. We take sometimes complex ideas, unpack them, and try to find those surprising connections.
Yeah, the threads that tie things together.
Exactly. And today, we've got this really interesting set of source materials. They're all dated August 6th, but, from different years.
Right.
So we're going to dive into what these specific August 6th can tell us about, well, everything, big global stuff, but also the quieter ways technology's been kind of reshaping how we think and interact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get into it then. Where do we start? August 6th, 1998.
Right.
A really tough day. 2 major bombings, Nairobi and Tanzania.
Yeah.
Horrific events. And on the same day, a very different kind of major event. Monica Lewinsky gives her first day of testimony.
Quite the split screen for public attention, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that 1998 date, looking back from, say, 2025, the source material points out something really striking about those bombings.
Oh.
They weren't just seen as isolated tragedies later on. They were viewed, in retrospect, as, and I'm quoting here, 2 of the dots that we eventually connected leading up to 9/11.
Wow.
Hindsight.
Exactly. It really shows how things that seem separate at the time can, well, form a pattern later. A really sobering example, the Lewinsky testimony, obviously a massive media event, but a very different kind of significance.
Okay, so from those huge world-shaking events, let's jump forward. August 6th, 2009.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the digital world really making its mark on just everyday observations. The note here is tweeting is a snapshot approach to language.
Ah, yes.
That really nails how communication was already shifting, becoming more condensed.
It does, and this ties directly into a really crucial point from the August 6th, 2025 source material.
Yeah.
It poses this great question about things like tweets, this micro-content. Was it just because early internet, like dial-up, was so slow? Or was it something more fundamental, like an evolution in how we choose to communicate, even when speed isn't the bottleneck?
That's interesting. So tech limitation versus cognitive preference?
Sort of. The source suggests it's not just about tech limits. It frames it more as cognitive load management.
Yeah.
Basically, as the sheer amount of information exploded, micro-content wasn't just a workaround. It was maybe our brain's way of coping, simplifying things.
Making it digestible, even if less nuanced.
Precisely. Which naturally leads us into talking about internet speeds themselves, the evolution there.
Oh, definitely. It's easy to forget how massive that shift was. From dial-up, clunky,
It
slow.
was painfully slow.
Right, to always-on connections. ISDN, then cable, maybe around 2000. That really changed the game. Those old copper wires had real limits.
They absolutely did, and that's why getting faster speeds was just revolutionary. The whole idea of full video capability online, that was just a dream with dial-up. Maybe tiny little clips you downloaded first.
Yeah, postage stamp-sized videos.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it directly reflected in how communication styles changed. We went from maybe longer emails
Yeah, thoughtful ones.
to, shorter, more fragmented forms, 6-word texts,
Yeah.
emojis, images replacing words.
The emojification of everything.
Right. And the source argues this often leads to ambiguity, less clarity. Because everyone's in a rush to get to the next thing.
Yeah.
It creates what the source calls a miasma of misunderstanding.
A miasma. I like that. A fog of unclear communication.
Pretty much. Even using voice dictation for texts, which seems efficient, can actually add to the lack of precision, the lack of careful wording.
So this need for speed, it's not just about how we take in information. What about creating it? For artists, creators, does this constant pressure change things?
Oh, undeniably. The source talks about how the demand for quick ingestion, for constant content, makes traditional craft-taking time, honing something, seem almost too slow.
Like you have to get it out now.
Yeah, to feel the rush of excitement, get the immediate feedback, it shifts the focus towards getting hits, likes, social media metrics.
Turning creativity into a transaction almost.
Exactly. And that can potentially lead to this race to the bottom, quality-wise, especially with user-generated stuff. It's interesting, our tech gets faster, processing speeds soar. But human mentation, our actual thinking process, isn't necessarily keeping up. The source suggests maybe we need to consciously slow down sometimes for deeper thought, more meaningful creation.
That makes sense. And even with fast internet, generally, you still get those little delays, latency, especially with cloud software, AI tools.
Ugh, yes.
That spinny wheel.
It totally breaks your flow.
Yeah.
Pulls you right out of the creative zone.
It really does.
And social media, powered by this constant connection. The source says it carburetes, like stokes our primal mammalian nature.
Yeah, that's a strong word.
It is. It suggests it fuels loneliness through superficial ties and this constant need for validation. Likes, Ratings. It's a cycle, a tough feedback loop.
Okay, so that's the big picture tech impact.
Right.
How does this filter down to individual artists trying to express themselves? Let's look at August 6, 2019.
Right.
There's this interesting note. Guitar solos are dead only to the degree that they exceed the attention span of the listener. But then it notes how popular soloing videos are. It hints at this shift, maybe away from the solo integrated into a song, towards the solo as a standalone performance piece, something designed for views, for likes.
Yeah, and this connects to what some sources say about the decline in interest broadly in things like jazz.
How so?
That impatience, the shorter attention spans we talked about. A complex jazz solo needs focus, maybe some understanding. The source says solos can work, but they can't be boring.
Right.
And making them really engaging takes serious practice, deep work, which maybe people aren't doing as much if they're focused on making quick videos instead of woodshedding for hours.
That focus shifts. Okay, jump to August 6th, 2020, a Quora post about artists and self-marketing. It makes the point that before social media, artists didn't really feel this pressure to do all their own promotion. They could focus more on the art itself.
Yeah, there were gatekeepers, labels, galleries.
Yeah.
They handled a lot of that. Now, the expectation is often that the artist does it all.
Which leads to this tension, right? Do you make art that fits the market, follows trends, or do you pursue what genuinely interests you?
That's the eternal struggle, amplified now perhaps. The source mentions a high degree of burnout when artists go all in on a marketing-first approach.
I can see that.
It really emphasizes being your own biggest fan.
Yeah.
If you genuinely believe in your work, that authenticity helps the marketing side. But relying solely on agents or publicists, the source warns that's been a disaster in many cases, for musicians specifically.
Interesting. Okay, moving closer to now, August 6th, 2022, AI and art.
Always a hot topic.
This source sees AI as potentially beneficial. Using cybernetics for music creation can be cool, but the author found it had a short shelf life creatively, meaning the novelty wears off, maybe. The idea is that these AI experiments should ultimately feed back into the artist's core vision, their own unique voice. And it also highlights how AI tools can be enriching for people without traditional musical skills that kind of democratizes making music.
Which ties into the August 6th, 2025 retrospective on AI. The feeling is, AI is now in the flow of creative work for many, but it hasn't replaced what I used to do.
Yeah.
It's not a cremation of old methods, as the source puts it. And there's this feeling that sometimes AI music can just be musical nothing, lacking soul.
Like technically proficient but empty?
Maybe. The analogy used is Bob Dylan going electric.
Ah, the folk purists were outraged.
Right, but Dylan didn't stop playing acoustic. It was a paradigm shift. Adding new tools, integrating them, changing the landscape, but not entirely erasing what came before.
That's a great analogy. Okay, we've covered tech, mind, communication, art, but these shifts hit everything. Politics, too.
Inevitably.
So our last date, August 6, 2024. Politics takes center stage. Harris announces Tim Walz as her VP pick.
Oh.
He's described as a Midwest happy warrior, maybe a Joe the plumber for Democrats. The source notes it was a bit of a surprise pick, Walz seen as an underdog.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
And it brings up that perennial question, how much does a VP choice really sway voters and which ones?
Yeah.
And it really highlights how political language works in this fast-paced media world. Framing is everything.
Speaking of framing, the source quotes Donald Trump's reaction from a fundraising email.
Oh, boy.
He apparently said Walz would be the worst VP in history and would unleash hell on earth.
The strong words, hell on earth.
Very strong. And then the source does something interesting. It neutrally presents the question, okay, what constitutes this hell?
Right.
It lists policies associated with Walz, things like free school lunches, universal background checks for guns, legalized marijuana.
So the source just lays it out there.
Exactly. It doesn't take a side. It just shows how that extreme language maps onto specific policy positions. It prompts you, the listener, to think about the rhetoric, the assumptions behind it, without endorsing any political view.
Clear example of language shaping perception.
Definitely. So as we wrap this up, it really is amazing how just looking at these few August 6 dates gives us this incredibly rich lens.
It really does.
Seeing these massive shifts in communication, creativity, how we relate to each other, all driven by tech, but also just basic human nature interacting with that tech. It shows how connected everything is, even across years.
It's a powerful way to see the threads